Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Tattoos and Telehealth, where we are going to talk about all things telemedicine and all things telehealth. But today we just want to remind everyone that this is for informational purposes only. This by no means is medical advice. This by no means constitutes a patient-provider relationship. Our people make us say those things. So today we're going to start out with some really, really exciting news. Nicole, guess what?
What?
Guess what I did yesterday?
What did you do?
I drove 3 hours just to get a new tattoo.
No, you did not.
Yes, because like
Let me
that's what
see. Let me see. Let me see.
she did so good. We're not done. There's still a lot to be done.
That is a lot done.
That is sitting still for 8 hours, like 8 hours.
Are you sore? Tell me, where did this
Cool.
come from? Where did this?
So this, as you can see, is like a little looking glass that you're
Yep.
looking into an old abandoned library with these little old steps that you kind of step into. Lining the walls are old books like you would see whenever you find an abandoned library.
Right.
And then, it steps out into this open field. But the theme behind it is, for me, I'm an old soul, but I love old books. And I love books that I can put my hands on and read. I will listen to an audiobook. In fact, I'll listen to two or three at a time. I'm the person that'll read two or three books at a time. But I also have shelves and shelves of books because I love to touch books and read them and have my hands on them.
Yep. Yep.
My happy place is turn me loose in a bookstore, turn me loose in a library. And if I had one of those old abandoned libraries where I could just sit and bring in the wealth of knowledge of those old, old books, oh, I would be a happy girl, a happy, happy girl. And so that's kind of what that signifies for me is just like
I love
finding
it.
this old abandoned place where you can just like let go. Like that is my spirit place to just be. So
Wow.
that's kind of
That
what
is
that is.
so cool. That is so cool. I have another colleague. She lives in Texas and she has an office. And she said, when we built this house, I told my husband, he's like, how far do you want to go up with the bookshelf? She goes, all the way up, and I want a ladder. I want a ladder. Like that's my thing. And so I was like, it looks really, really cool to go to her house and like you can truly like it looks like a library. I have some really old medical books. What do you collect? Like what kind of books do you collect?
So I collect old leather-bound books, but I
Uh-huh.
like I like the classics. I went to New York for a trip with my daughter one year, and I went to the New York Public Library, and they had a collection of old mystery books that were like the old Edgar Allan Poe and some of the old classics, but
Wow.
they had compiled them into one collective series that was leather bound, all put together. And I bought that book and I was like, this would make a perfect addition. So I love those old books that they're by
Wow.
authors that people have kind of forgotten about, but they're the classics. They're like what started that genre of
Yeah,
book.
for
Um,
sure.
those.
Wow. That's so cool. That's
Yeah.
so cool. So yeah, it's beautiful.
If I can get a signed book, like by an author, like that's legitimately signed, not computer signed, but like the ink on the pages.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
that's so cool. That's really, really cool. That's really cool. Well, you'll have to keep us posted on when you get the rest of it done and all that stuff. That's so cool. That's so cool. I know, yeah, all of mine means something. And I mean, it's definitely more widely accepted as far as tattoos and things like that. They're meaningful. They're not, I mean, sometimes they're done in bad taste, I guess you could say, but like most of the time people get them and there's some value to it. Like this one is got my dad on it on his tractor. There's some kind of meaning to it. Yeah. And it's got a hay field in the back.
Oh, I love
There you
that.
can see the hay bales, but yeah, that's my dad. But anyway, they always mean something. So that's so cool.
Yeah.
But yours, I love that color. I love it.
Really pretty. It was a lot of time of lying down and sitting still. And yeah, it
So
was
what's
great.
left to do on it?
So she's going to, at the base of it, we're going to put like a gilded moth that is almost like their antennas are holding the base of this looking glass. And then the gilded moth is going to go like down here, like it's holding everything up. And then we're going to run some vines and some more plants and moths and flowers to kind of blend it all together. And
Yeah.
we're going to start at the top with color and then work our way down into black and gray. So it just kind of fades its way down the arm, but then just to kind of blend the rest of it together. I'm so excited. super excited.
That's really cool. That's really, really cool. So when will you go back to do the rest? Will it be a couple weeks or a couple months or?
Look, whenever she and I have time.
I know it.
The
I
life of a
know.
provider and the life of a very busy tattoo artist.
I know. I
She's young,
know.
but this girl she became very good very fast. She's training under one of the probably most well-known tattoo artists in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and she's learning a lot and she's becoming very famous very quickly. And so her books went to being easy for me to get on like within a couple of weeks to booking 3 and 4 months out. And I'm like, whoa. So she's hard to get in. Like she just came back from they did a tattoo festival or a tattoo convention, I want to say in Oregon, maybe. And she's leaving in a couple of weeks to go to London. They're doing a tattoo convention in London. So she's leaving in 2 weeks and will be gone for 2 weeks in London. I'm like, girl. And she's in her early 20s.
That's amazing.
I'm
That's
like, girl,
amazing.
live your life, friend. Live your life. That's awesome.
That is awesome. I love to hear success stories about people just doing unconventional things and they're just rocking it. Like truly, truly, truly. Very, very cool. Well, today we're just going to quickly talk about A1C, hemoglobin A1C. What the heck is it? Why do providers ask for it? What does it mean? And how do we get that number? An A1C is the blood test that is diagnostic for diabetes. An A1C level tells us whether you're not diabetic at all, pre-diabetic, or diabetic type 2. Type 1 is not part of this conversation. That is completely, it's different, separate animal that's usually diagnosed during childhood. We're not talking about type 1 diabetes. We're talking about type 2 only. And so it goes back to the life cycle of a red blood cell. So a red blood cell, the life of a red blood cell is 90 days and then it dies off. So we create more pretty much in the marrow. And I'm going to make this very general, but we create red blood cells in the marrow. They live for 90 days, they float around, and then they die off. So glucose attaches to our red blood cells. So when we order blood tests and A1C, you get your blood drawn, and we're able to look at the average glucose number that you have in your bloodstream for 90 days because those red blood cells have only lived for 90 days. So we're able to see what is the average glucose for that 90 days. And that's where that number comes from. And I'll let Kelli talk about the ranges and stuff like that in a little bit. But that is why when you have a hemoglobin A1C, we can run a new one every 90 days and we're going to get a whole new set of reads. So for example, just to kind of put it into a little bit of perspective, I typically don't like to order A1Cs in January, February, and into the beginning of March because I'm getting the red blood cells from Thanksgiving, from Christmas,
Exactly.
from New Year's. So is that your normal? I don't know about you, but I'm eating more snacks around that time. I'm eating more stuffing, more carbs. So my sugar, is, I mean, I'm not diabetic, so my pancreas is going to do what it has to do and it's going to regulate it. But for someone who's diabetic, they don't regulate it. So every 90 days, we're going to get a whole new set of blood so that we can pull the blood, take a look at that red blood cell, and then say, okay, you are within this range or that range. So you're considered, pre-diabetic or whatever. But that's really what it is we're taking a look at the average glucose on those red blood cells. And that's why I say, okay, a lot of times you'll say, okay, we'll run it in 3 months. We'll run it in 6 months because we know as providers, we're going to get a whole nother number. So for a patient that I diagnose as diabetic, I will put them on medication to help that, but I will run an A1C at least 3 months after I start the medication, because then I have that whole entire time of them on the medication. So that's really what an A1C is, a hemoglobin A1C. Hemoglobin just is the red blood cell. And there's more to it, but in short, hemoglobin is your blood and the red blood cell, and that's what carries our glucose. So that's the skinny on what the heck is a hemoglobin A1C. So Kelli, if you want to talk about ranges, because there was like, am I pre-diabetic? Am I like, what the heck does pre mean? How does this work? Like either you're diabetic or you're not, but it's not like pregnancy. Either you're pregnant or you're not, right? Either you have asthma or you don't. Like there is a pre range where it's like, okay, you're getting close, like you're not quite normal, it's abnormal, but you're not full blown yet. So we want to talk about those ranges just quickly, and hopefully people will have a better insight as to why we run these tests and what they mean.
Sure. And I think it's also important to say, like Nicole just mentioned, it's a picture of what your body has been doing in the last 90 days. Also knowing that we will take into consideration, were you on vacation during those times? Were you at kids' birthday parties? Was it holidays? Was it, what was happening during those times that might have made it skew one way or the other? And it's also important to understand that we don't diagnose you off of one number. If you come back with one number that's elevated, you know, research tells us, literature tells us, repeat the test. Repeat the test, make sure that it's diagnostic off of two tests at least. Like Nicole said, we're going to go ahead and counsel you about it. We're going to chit chat. We're going to talk about what some things that you can do to improve those numbers. Because ideally, in a healthy person, your pancreas should be able to keep up with that and treat your body accordingly and make those adjustments and how it releases insulin, how it processes glucose, how it takes care of carbs. But if you start creeping up towards that pre-diabetes range, and I'll get to that in just a second, consistently, then that tells us that your pancreas really is not able to keep up with what it should be. So what that just means is you need to make some lifestyle changes. And if you can't, or you make those changes and your body still can't quite do it, now we need to start talking about medications. So each lab, and this is important to remember, each lab has their own set of normal ranges. So it's important to know that your provider is going to pick a lab, or they have a lab, or they choose a lab, or you have a lab based on what your insurance pays for that has their own set of normals. But for the most part, A1Cs are pretty standard. Normal is typically less than 5.6 to 5.7-ish, somewhere around there. Pre-diabetes is usually somewhere around 5.7-ish to 6.4-ish, give or take a tenth on that scale. And then diabetes is typically 6.5 or higher, anywhere around there. And again, labs have their numbers that could be off by a tenth or more, depending on what the lab has. And those are equated to a fasting plasma glucose. So if you are pre-diabetic, remember I said anything less than we'll stick to the lab that I use, 5.7%. So pre-diabetes, that means that your fasting plasma glucose is less than 126. So less than 126, that equates over the last 90 days, your average fasting plasma glucose has been less than 126. If you are in the normal range, then your fasting plasma glucose has been less than 100. If you've ever gone and had fasting labs done because your provider said, hey, let's check your cholesterol this year. So when you go get your labs done, I want you to be fasting. And you go have them drawn and your fasting glucose is less than 100, then you know that your A1C probably is going to be in that normal range, less than 5.7. Diabetes is going to be a fasting plasma glucose. We said, remember, greater than 6.5% on a hemoglobin A1C scale, which equates to a fasting plasma glucose of greater than 126. And again, we're going to be sure that when you go have your tests done and we see you back and we talk to you about those results, we're probably going to repeat them. Like Nicole said, we're going to wait 90 days. We're probably going to make some adjustments, talk to you about lifestyle changes, foods that we're eating. If it's really high, we may go ahead and put you on a medication just to see if we can augment what your body is struggling to do on its own. Then we're going to wait 90 days. We're going to do it again. So that's kind of what hemoglobin A1C numbers will look like. Again, just keep in mind that it is a direct reflection of what your body has been doing over the last 90 days. It's really fascinating what we as providers can learn over that snapshot in time, because your red blood cell, the lifespan of a red blood cell over 90 days can tell us so much. And because it lives for 90 days, there's a lot of markers on that complete blood count that we can learn about what that blood cell has been through. So it's really fascinating. Of course, us nerds, we get into that stuff, but that's just one of the fun things that we get to see is in 90 days, your body has been struggling to or adequately doing its job in maintaining this level. And so it's for us, it's really fascinating. We know your pancreas is functioning appropriately. It's pumping out
Yeah.
insulin like it's supposed to. Your body is taking care. Your gut is healthy. It's processing foods the way it's supposed to. It's allowing bile to be secreted into the gut to break down foods to pass through. Like all of the systems are working appropriately, which in a perfect world is fantastic, right? But the great thing is, if it's not, for whatever reason,
We can help.
hemoglobin A1C levels give us a perfect opportunity to say, oh, let's push on the brakes for just a second and see what's going on, because that just leads to a world of issues.
Absolutely, absolutely. And sometimes I'll get patients to say, "Well, my glucose came back on my labs, and it was 129." And I'll say, "Okay, number one, were you fasting? Number two, we cannot say you're insulin resistant or diabetic based on just one glucose read at that moment, because a glucose read, a glucose number, is just at that exact moment. Well, if you had breakfast, it's going to be different, right? Or it goes like this, and we'll get into like more of like the physiology of it in another episode. But what we really want to say is, we can see a lot from these labs. We can, like Kelly said, with the red blood cells, we know so many things. We know from just a basic lab draw, we know the color of your red blood cells. Are they bright? Are they pale? We know the size. Are they too big? Are they macrocytic? Are they all too small? Are they microcytic? Or are they kind of all just a nice, some new, some old, and a really, really good mix? So there's so much that just basic labs can tell us. But today we just wanted to cover the A1C because a lot of people are becoming more aware of, okay, am I diabetic? Am I pre-diabetic? Where does this fall with me helping manage my weight and that kind of thing? And there's so many problems that come along with being diabetic, to include amputation of limbs at the most extreme. But we just wanted to touch on that today. Kelly and I both order labs all the time. We will be happy to order labs and to go over them with you. You can find me at HamiltonTelehealth.com, www.HamiltonTelehealth.com. And then Kelly, let them know where they can find you at, because we're more than happy to go over these labs and not just say, here, they're all good, or work on this, or here's a pill. Like, we like to, here's your numbers, here's why, here's what you can do to fix it.
Exactly. So you can find me at charihealth.com, CHARI health.com. And again, like Nicole said, we want you guys to be as happy as you should be with your provider. Please remember, your provider works for you. Oftentimes we forget about that. When you go see a provider and you make an appointment and you pay your copay, or you pay their visit, or you pay whatever they're charging you to be there, your provider works for you. You are paying them for a service. Please, please, please make them work for you. Nicole and I take this very seriously. It's our heart passion. It's our soul passion at what makes us feel good. And we take the time to visit with our patients. We don't just say, here's your labs, here's what it means, take this medication. Like she said, we don't do a pill for an ill. That's not our gig here, guys. And we're going to sit down and explain those labs to you the best we possibly can. So please just be sure you reach out, like Nicole said, HamiltonTelehealth.com. For me, CariHealth.com. Reach out, let us know how we can help. If for any reason you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, please just pop in. We're happy to answer those questions for you. I hope that makes better sense. I hope that you guys have a better understanding of why we order hemoglobin A1C, what that means, what it can tell us, which is a plethora of information. Just one little number tells us so much about your body. But yeah, that's it. Nicole, do you have anything to add?
No, I think that's it. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you next time.
Well, bye, guys.